Kersey.
Well, good evening, everybody. Good evening. And may I say thank you very much for coming, and how nice to see so many of you. You know, I think we've managed to fill the room, and that's all you can ask for in these circumstances. Not all is as ideal as I would have wished, and in particular I find that my words are being accompanied by the sound of automated popular music of some kind. But I feel sure that this can be remedied, otherwise it will give a somewhat incongruous impression as I start to speak to you.
We thought you liked it. Kill the
yes. May I say yes. May I say on behalf of the TVG, thank you very much to all of you for coming. I hope the buffet has been adequate and to your liking, and obviously we have had a good year, I think. It was a very good conference earlier in the year, at which I know many of you were present. I think in general it's been a year in which we have made some moves forward of various kinds. I imagine many of you will have seen the new website with its attendant bells and whistles, and that website is really the brainchild of Louis, who sadly can't be with us tonight. Louis has, however, left us a duty as members of the TBG, which is to pay for the website, and in that way we have a raffle which you can buy a ticket for £5, and if you are successful in the raffle, which I must say I never am, then you will win this magnificent bottle of champagne, which I think is absolutely splendid and would make your Christmas an even happier one. So, do buy a raffle ticket afterwards. You've come here in the expectation of hearing me talk about something, and I'm going to hope that I don't disappoint you in giving a short talk of that kind. I'm aware that we don't have enough seats for everybody, so I'll try and keep it fairly brief. I'm going to talk about legacy, and I'm going to talk about legacy in the context of traditionalism. And I hope that these remarks will also appear somewhat seasonal. I think it's only too appropriate that they should be. It's said that Don Paul Neville, who was headmaster of Ampleforth from 1924 to 54, was at a meeting of the headmasters' conference. The theme of the discussion there was preparation for life. And various headmasters were vying to show how their schools were at the cutting edge in preparing their pupils for life in various ways. And Don Paul rose and said, "Gentlemen, I've been very impressed to hear how your schools are preparing pupils for life. I have little to add to that discussion, because my school prepares its boys not for life but for death." And I'm going to mention some aspects of the significance of death from the perspective of one of the key aspects of traditionalist conservatism, and that is, of course, the idea of legacy. The concept of legacy is as integrated into our society here as the family itself. The idea that we may have an influence on generations to come, and in a number of ways our legacy is not simply a genetic one, it's not simply having children in terms of descendants, but it can also have significant effects on future generations who are completely unrelated to us and would never have known about us but for it. I would contend that if we seek to stand for positive values in our lives, we can also hope that when we're dead, those values will not merely continue, because all true values are eternal after all, but that our engagement with them can assist others in turn to discover and be enriched by them in various ways. When Edward Latimer, a London city merchant, died childless in 1624, he made several important provisions in his will. The will left a sum in trust that would provide 8 poor boys from Edmonton and another 8 from Fulham yearly on November the 1st with a doublet, a pair of breeches, a shirt, a pair of woolen stockings and shoes. In return for being educated to the age of 13 at what was then known as a petty school, the boys had to wear the Red Cross from Latimer's coat of arms on their sleeves. Now, the trustees of Edward Latimer's will are under a duty to carry out the provisions of that will, and I quote, until the end of the world. The effect of Latimer's will has been very far-reaching. From the original 8 poor boys, the Latimer Foundation now has responsibility for 3 large and thriving schools, 2 in Hammersmith, 1 in Edmonton. And it was at the latter, which is the senior school of the Foundation, that I myself was educated. Had that not been so, I should never have heard of Edward Latimer. Instead, as in many other schools of a similar vintage, the founder was commemorated each year on Foundation Day, which had the notable benefit of being a half-day holiday. The lesson of what Latimer did can be summarised in this way. He was determined that the wealth he had created would not simply die with him, but would be used to nurture something that he believed in strongly. By establishing what would in modern times be termed a charitable bequest, he ensured that his estate would neither pass to distant relatives, although they did contest his will, nor into the clutches of government. His actions are a fine example of noblesse oblige, the doctrine that holds that to those to whom wealth is given, there falls a concomitant responsibility to administer that wealth in a way that benefits the common good. It will come as no surprise to those who have heard me talk before, many of whom are here today, that G.K. Chesterton is one of the writers to whom I make frequent reference. In his book Orthodoxy, Chesterton has this to say: tradition means giving a vote to the most obscure of all classes, our ancestors. It is the democracy of the dead. He continues, tradition refuses to submit to the small and arrogant oligarchy of those who merely happen to be walking about. All democrats object to men being disqualified by the accident of birth. Tradition objects to their being disqualified by the accident of death. Democracy tells us not to neglect a good man's opinion, even if he is our groom. Tradition asks us not to neglect a good man's opinion, even if he is our father. What Chesterton is referring to is the interconnectedness of human existence throughout the generations. All of us are the sum total of our ancestors in terms of our genetics, but we may also forget how like them we can be not only in our looks but in our character. If we look to the famous families of England, these intergenerational traits can often be observed and are aided by the ability to refer to portraiture from previous centuries that can reveal much about those who have gone before. We also share a more general commonality. Not for naught did writers of past generations attribute particular characteristics to the people of the various regions of our island, or refer to the English race, or speak of us as the island stock, or indeed this happy breed. For those of us whose ancestry here reaches back some centuries, before the time of widespread immigration, we are each other's kith and kin far more than is commonly acknowledged, even though it must be said that it is part of our national character to keep others at a certain distance. This shared heritage should not surprise us, since our island is not a large one, and for many centuries the English flourished unconquered. In truth, we are living links in the chain that binds us from the dead to the unborn. We hold our lives in trust, and should be determined to pass to the next generation that which we ourselves have enjoyed, in as good, if not a better condition. Indeed, that concept of trust is enshrined in English law, and is one of the crowning glories of that legal system. The trustee has ownership, but his ownership is conceived exclusively as a duty. This remains the embodiment of intelligent conservatism, because it safeguards those things that are of value and prevents them from being dissipated or squandered. How different our society is now from that which Edward Latimer knew. We should remember that in his day there was no income tax. That would not arrive fully until 1842, and few restrictions on what a man could do with his assets. His rights under common law were inalienable. It's still possible for someone to leave their entire estate to charity today, but otherwise there are many pitfalls that work to oppose any idea of legacy. Why should this be? If we seek to understand how English society has been comprehensively destabilised during the past century, we need look no further than the obscenity of death duties. This socialist measure is designed to forcibly redistribute wealth. to rob the wealthy of their inheritance, and to smash the hierarchy that is inbuilt into England's history and character. Countless landed families have gone under, forced to sell the home that was theirs for generations, and see their heritage squandered by here today, gone tomorrow politicians who hate the established way of life of these islands and their people with a fervour that I have never understood. Many today comment on the shallowness of our society, its short-termism and the atomisation of its people. Our society penalises those who save money and instead encourages everyone to live on so-called easy credit. It privileges two classes of people: those at the bottom who have no money and can therefore obtain the maximum in benefits that is available to them, and those who are at the top, who have so much money that they can either engage in creative ways to hide it or simply not worry about it at all. Those in the middle are not merely squeezed, they are prisoners of a brutal and uncaring state machine that is designed to exploit their labour and remove their wealth for whatever vain pursuit may be in fashion at the time. Foreign expeditionary wars, high-speed tour, house building on swathes of our green belt in order to house the ever-increasing numbers entering our country, these are the things that no one seems to want, and yet everyone is obliged to pay for. While there is legitimacy to the Crown as a hereditary landowner and centre of wealth in the Britannic realm, there is none whatsoever in the aggregation of wealth by Parliament. The modern state is entitled to nothing. Everything it owns it has gained by legalised theft from its subjects. Its sole aim is to keep its subjects in their place so that the rich stay rich, the poor stay poor, and everybody else stays worried, harassed and permanently short of money.
Very true.
It is no wonder that our society should be shallow and short-termist if the result of aggregating even a modest level of wealth is that death duties of a swingeing 40% should forcibly redistribute it against your wishes. It is an absolute scandal that the government that maintains this robbery, backed of course by the ultimate threat of violence, should call itself conservative. It is nothing of the kind. It has embraced a socialism that Marx himself would have applauded, and it is the embodiment of the politics of envy that is so very popular with the Labour Party these days. Can we be surprised then that the most logical response to such measures is to resort to an empty hedonism? If you can neither take your wealth with you nor give it to whom you wish without contortions and expensive planning, it is all too natural simply to spend the lot. I don't want to talk about legacy simply in terms of money, though. There remain personal elements of legacy that are part of living life as a traditionalist, and that apply whatever the state of our own personal exchequer. Indeed, these elements are considerably more important than any financial consideration, but they are not only actions taken with a view to the future, but also actions that reveal and may indeed form our characters. Not for nothing is it said that success built purely on money and material goods is an empty vessel. Since we cannot immediately hope to displace the state or to abolish taxation, we should instead concentrate on what we can do to create value for ourselves. The creation of value, of significance and of substance is something that will outlast us even if the things we have created no longer exist. Consider Socrates, a man who wrote nothing that survived him. Everything we know of his thought has been filtered through those who knew and were influenced by him, chiefly Plato and Xenophon, and also Aristophanes and Aristotle. For that matter, consider Jesus Christ, whose words were conveyed to us through his disciples. Theirs may be a barely tangible legacy, but they have created an immense sphere of influence throughout the entirety of Western civilization. What we see here is a chain not dissimilar to the genetic chain I described earlier, but here it is a chain of ideas, whereby one person influences another and in turn builds those ideas into his worldview. The philosophy expounded by Socrates and the different philosophy expounded by Jesus is not merely a set of dead ideas confined to the distant past. It is a living legacy, debated and discovered afresh by every generation. To leave a legacy even remotely approaching this brings a satisfaction far beyond that of materialism. It is to know that something of us will remain alive when even our tomb has disappeared. Even if our accomplishments are of necessity considerably more modest than those I've cited, we can still derive great satisfaction from engagement in work of significance. Creative endeavour of any kind is an obvious means of adding value to life, but there are other ways towards the same fulfilment. Engagement in work that seeks to promote the betterment of our society and the improvement of the lives of others enables us to participate with the same spirit that inspired Edward Latimer. The raising of children who are educated to understand the importance of our core values is another crucial task, and one that must increasingly be undertaken in opposition to government. If we are to dedicate ourselves to seeking this fulfilment, we must first realise that our lives are finite and that there is no time to waste. This is what my opening quotation means. If we prepare for death, we live our lives with a perspective that looks for the good that we can accomplish in the time left to us, and we actively consider the way we want to be remembered. We may be impelled towards that consideration by religious belief, or we may simply want to honour life itself, for it is a gift and it is one that is all too fragile. Whatever the case, we are unlikely to emerge from such contemplation with the view that the way forward is that of pointless nihilism. More likely, we will conclude that the values that are at the heart of us impel us towards a life of integrity. They will be values that, as we explore them more deeply, will reveal a moral code, and will moreover speak to those aspects of our character that we will want to develop. We all begin as deeply imperfect and flawed clay. We can mould ourselves into something that can transcend our past and achieve both self-respect and the respect of others. We may find our value in a job, but there is no reason why value should be confined there. What people do when they are not at work is an area that continually surprises and intrigues me. I was recently introduced to a phrase, which is a wonderful French phrase, and if I translate it, it means the violins of Ingres. Ingres was a famous French painter, and oddly enough, what he was best at was painting. But what he really liked doing was playing the violin. And so when that phrase is used, it means, where's your passion? What is it that you really like doing? Doesn't matter whether anybody else thinks you're any good at it. Some people I know balance their lives so that their work is merely a means of paying the bills, without interest in career or promotion. Their passion is explored outside any environment of financial reward, and may well be the better for it. And as for finance, all of us except the most impoverished can benefit from learning to live on less than we do. The consequence is greater financial freedom, and with that comes greater personal freedom. Whatever we do, its effect is to turn us outward. Spending time with others, particularly others who need us, is often one of the most valuable things we can do. What we are asked to do in such situations is not to give money, but to give of ourselves. We each have qualities and talents that can give pleasure and provide lasting enjoyment. Our lives are the better for sharing them. The impact we have on the lives of others is something that will outlast us. It is the most important legacy that most of us will have the chance to leave. It's not a coincidence, as I say, that I'm delivering this talk in Advent. Indeed, I did promise to others that it would be a morally improving talk, and I hope it's been so without becoming a sermon. It's easy in today's world to neglect our common humanity. It's one of the most frequent charges that's laid against us by those who oppose us, and I hope I've been able to counteract that impulse. Traditionalists may argue over exactly what it is that they are preserving, but I would maintain that it's a way of living in which people have context, where they feel a part of landscape, heritage, society and country in a way that binds them to their roots and enables them to, in turn, to engage in propagation. It is, in short, the opposite of the Marxist society that promotes merely alienation and consequent misery. And with that, I wish all of you a Merry Christmas. Thank you. Do you manage to get it all on there?